We are joined by Ambassador Tibor Nagy Jr. He's Vice Provost of International Affairs at Texas Tech University, former ambassador to Ethiopia, and first-generation immigrant, fled the country of Hungary
with my dad.
With your dad decades ago.
Right. Yep. My dad was in the Hungarian army. He was condemned to death for fighting against the Soviet army during Hungary's brief 10 days of freedom, and so we had to leave very, very quickly, along with about 200,000 other Hungarians out of a population of 10 million. So, wow. we know what it's like. The big difference was we were welcomed with open arms, and neighboring Austria and then the United States took most of us in and resettled us all over the country.
And now we have a different crisis
totally
going on.
Different.
The United Nations is saying that this is the biggest immigration crisis since World War II.
We have more asylum seekers now than the world has ever seen. There are 66 million people seeking asylum. That's on the refugee side. So they would be the 20th largest country in the world if you put all those people together.
Wow. What is the difference between being a refugee and a migrant?
Yeah, because everybody's lumping them all together, right?
And that's very, very important distinction. To be a refugee, you have to fear persecution and cross an international border. A migrant is somebody who is leaving their place of abode to seek basically a better life. And all over Africa, there are bad governments, so people don't have economic opportunities. So they're young, they're ambitious, just like young people anywhere, and they want to make it to Europe or, to America and have a much better life. Those are migrants. They do not qualify for refugee status. People do not need to take them in, just like we have a right to seal our southern border, and we have a right to decide who comes into the United States. Asylum seekers, bona fide refugees, can register for asylum, and the United Nations will try to help them out. So there is a huge difference.
And those are people that are fleeing like a war situation?
Or they're Christian in IS, held territory. They can fear for their life, their safety. Women who want to get away from a society where they are being severely discriminated against. But sometimes a refugee, somebody's both a refugee and a migrant. You don't want to get your head cut off by ISIS, but you also want a better job in Germany.
Right.
So that's the huge question. And some of the countries in Europe where they first show up, like my native Hungary, are being absolutely overrun by these people. So it's ironic. Hungary tore down the wall that used to keep people in.
Wow.
Now they're building a wall on the Serbian border to try to keep out these thousands and thousands of refugees coming, from where the Arab Spring happened.
And boatloads of people, boats going down in the Mediterranean, the 18-wheeler full of 71 bodies the other day.
That was on the Hungarian-Austrian border.
Yeah, these things are happening more and more.
Okay, now, realistically, I just want to kind of juxtapose what you just said about the wall in Hungary. They had a wall to keep people in
during communist time,
and they tore it down, and now they're building the wall back to keep people out.
Yeah, okay. Right.
What can the United States of America take from this? I mean, can we take a cue from this? Is this legitimate, or is this kind of a backwoods hillbilly idea?
I very strongly believe every country has absolutely every right to protect its borders. They have to. And whatever works because, at the end of the day, the countries have sovereignty and they can decide who comes in and doesn't. And it's difficult for me to say that, having been a welcome refugee, in the United States. But the Europeans have screwed up big time because they do not have a common policy. That's the big thing. Like Germany wants to take in 800,000 refugees, but they have to pass through Hungary and Greece and Italy and Spain. And the Hungarians are not crazy about having that many people pass through a small country, which is relatively poor. The Greeks, we all know about the Greek financial crisis,
right.
And all these people are showing up on Greek islands, and there are more refugees on these islands than there are Greek residents. So they're being overwhelmed. It is a crisis for all of Europe, but the Europeans, as is usually the case, cannot get their act together.
Well, in Greece, they can't even take care of themselves.
Exactly.
So,
exactly.
And isn't that the land of, like, where you're limited to, like, 1 square or 2 squares of toilet paper or something like that?
That's the country where you're not allowed to flush toilet paper.
I'm sorry, but that's just nasty.
I don't know where Tom's going to go with that.
I know, right?
No, I was just, it's because
he
you
thinks
have.
about that daily now.
Well, no, I mean, my thing is if you come from a country where you're flushing, it could be there could be another crisis.
That's right.
Anyway, before we hit the break, we're just going to have a little bit of ambassadorial trivia.
No.
All right. Now, we're not going to do this. We thought we might put together like ambassadorial Jeopardy where, Tibor could be the game master. We'll just let him be, the information source.
Uh-oh.
All right. This is really interesting. And off mic, I thought you would like to know about our conversation off mic. What is the number one United States export to Lome, Togo?
Frozen turkey tails.
Somebody's got to eat them.
They don't.
Right?
Okay.
Frozen turkey tails, because that is a hugely popular street snack in Togo. They deep fry it in palm oil and sell it on the street. Yeah, with a little stick.
Right
turkey tails on a stick.
Right alongside of the mouse on a stick.
Exactly, with the mouse on a stick. The mouse on a stick costs a little bit more. I think it's 2,000 CFA.
Okay, 2,000.
Okay, but I have a question about the mouse on a stick. Can you tell by looking at it that it's a mouse on a stick?
It kind of has the form of a mouse,
really?
But you don't see the little eyes and the little nose and the little ears.
Oh, my word.
Well, the poor thing's been scalded in oil for crying out loud.
Well, I know. I didn't know if it was like chunks of meat that they stick on.
No, it's just a little
like
mouse.
we do kebabs here.
Do they have mouse
or if
kebabs?
they just, ew.
But they have bat curry in the Seychelles.
Nice.
What?
Bat curry.
Bat curry.
It's kind of puree.
Well, no, it's a little bat with the wings folded on a bed of rice with curry sauce.
That's where Grandpa from the Munsters gets posed in the casket.
Oh, my.
All right, number 2 export to Lome, Togo.
Used American clothing.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah, all over West Africa, used American clothing is huge. So from Dakar, Senegal, all the way up to Douala, Cameroon, containers and containers, thousands of containers.
So
from
if
the
you
US.
and I put together about 5 or 6 containers of used American clothes,
sure.
we could make $1 million.
Sell them, I don't know about $1 million, but we could sell it out very quickly because used American clothing is extremely popular. Except, remember, the clothing that is in the U.S., most of that stuff's made in China anyway.
Yeah, so it's just kind of making
China, U.S., and then back to
So
West
what you're telling me
Yeah.
is these people ain't the brightest light bulbs on the tree.
Well, it's not that. It's just that it's very popular. The jeans, sweatshirts, Texas Tech sweatshirt, whatever.
So who's making the money on that? Because people give their clothes
traders,
away.
The traders.
Yeah.
Because, say, the U.S., people that you give them to will sell them to monetize it, and then they'll end up in containers going to West Africa.
Next question, because most people are wondering where Lome, Togo is so they can book their next vacation.
Okay.
Try mouse.
Lome, the capital of Togo. Togo is between Ghana and Benin.
Well, that tells me.
that helps.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm there.
That narrows it down.
West coast of Africa. And that's the part of Africa, actually, where a lot of people who ended up being slaves in the U.S. came from. That was called the Slave Coast once upon a time.
Wow. Okay. In conversation with Ambassador Tibor Naj Jr., Vice Provost of International Affairs, Texas Tech University, former ambassador to Ethiopia, and first-generation immigrant, which actually fled Hungary. Or fled Hungary
To Austria.
to Austria
And
with your
then
father. What year was that?
1956.
Wow.
And then the U.S. government invited us to come to America because of my dad's job in the Hungarian military.
Nice. Okay.
Well, we're glad you're here.
I am too, believe it.
We appreciate your ambassadorial business. All right. Just a question. A lot of this immigration from Syria, Afghanistan, Iraq, people making their way to Europe. Mm-hmm. You said, a lot of other people are making their way to
The Mediterranean. Yep.
And, you kind of juxtapose that with, the biggest migratory corridor, which is South America to the United States.
Right.
And a lot of those countries don't. This is what I don't understand. You're saying a lot of those countries don't want this migratory flow through their country, But it seems like the way that it's put out there that Mexico doesn't have that big of a problem with it.
Exactly, and that's the thing. A lot of these countries can't decide because on the one hand, they know they can't really stop them. So some countries actually facilitate getting the migrants through their countries and the heck out of there. So it's somebody else's problem. Mm-hmm. The European countries, what they're supposed to be doing is the very first country that these people show up in, they're supposed to register them, and then turn their case over to the United Nations. But they don't. They're thinking, this is a huge bureaucratic hassle. Like the Greeks can't deal with it. They say, let's just get them the heck out of here, look the other way, and then they'll end up in Hungary. And the Hungarians are saying, well, they want to get to Germany. We don't want to deal with them.
Okay, well, this is, and you say this about Greece, but correct me if I'm wrong. Is Greece not an island?
No.
It's not an island. Okay.
There's a whole bunch of islands, but it's basically a huge peninsula. But to get from Greece to the next kind of EU country, you have to go through a non-EU country. Because, see, that's the other complication. Europe has this thing called the Schengen zone, which is a borderless zone within the European Union. And once you get to a Schengen zone country like Hungary, from there you're supposed to be able to get to any other country in Europe that's in the Schengen zone without ever having to show your papers again. So it's like, once you get to Texas, you can get to New York State without having to, cross border formalities. And that's the same thing Europe tried to do.
That's a nightmare.
And that's why you have that big thing in France with the UK tunnel, the tunnel going to the United Kingdom. Because the United Kingdom,
I've been in that tunnel.
They're not in the Schengen zone. England wanted no part of the Schengen zone. Mm-hmm. So all of these migrants want to get on the trains and the trucks that are, going through the tunnel.
Wow. Okay, on immigration, I just want to get a comment from you on this. Chris Christie over the weekend, was saying that he wants to get in contact with Fred Smith, former CEO of FedEx, when they can track a package. Now, if somebody comes into this country, there's only two ways I'm thinking that we can figure out how to track people. One is going to be chip them like an animal. Two is some sort of indelible, unremovable, like barcode.
Yeah, biometric data. But, what's interesting to me is these people who are promoting this kind of an idea, I'm sure if you asked them about a world government, they would be dead set against a world government.
Yeah, definitely.
And the easiest way to get to a world government is exactly to start, Big Brother, things like that, that you can never, ever hide ever again anywhere. You can never have your privacy. You can never be yourself. Why don't we just put 666 on everybody's, arms? So to me, just because it's efficient doesn't mean it's right. I mean, how many of the people listening would want to be chipped or have a barcode put on their foreheads when they're born? And yet, it's 100% way to guarantee that you would know exactly where anyone is at any one time.
Mm-hmm. And how many of us who are moms and dads would not go to any length to get our children to a place that's safer?
Oh, exactly.
It's just, I feel the desperation.
Yeah, because we talk about millions, but each of those is an individual tragic story.
Absolutely.
I just wanted to ask you a question, and I'm not saying this and trying to be disrespectful or insensitive. But let's say that your country is a boat, and it is loaded, and there are people that are swimming for the boat, but if you pull one more person in out of the water, your boat will sink. Yeah. Do you try and pull them in and make the best of it, or do you leave them in the water?
Or swim to the empty boats? And a lot of Europe now is empty boats because the populations are aging and they actually need more people.
Here I was going for the controversial answer, and then he gives me the empty boat thing.
You went all Titanic
I'm a diplomat. Don't try this at home.
Yeah.
Hey, man, great conversation.
Thanks so much for coming in.
Thank you, guys. It's always so much fun being with the two of you.
Next time that you go to Lome, Togo, I want you to bring us home a mouse bag.
Tell U.S. Customs to let it through, and I'll bring it home to you.
Ew.
Yum.
Yeah, wow.
Just take a picture.
Okay, all right, that's a deal.
It's the 2015 mouse cook-off, mouse on a stick cook-off, Lome, Togo. Yeah, fried turkey tails. Yum. Wow.